Hi, and welcome to the Plateau Ag Research and Education Center. Here we do the outdoor laboratory work for the scientists in Knoxville to test their theories at a production scale. My name is Ann Moore, and I'm going to show you greenhouse hydroponic tomato production today. What we do is prevent farmers from making mistakes, costly mistakes, and growers at home, we give them tips and pointers on what we found to work the best in our crop. Although this is hydroponics, there still are some things that relate to home gardens, and we're always here for the public for any questions they have about insects or diseases or any kind of regular culture that we do with our crops. And I'd like to give you a little bit of the background of our hydroponic tomatoes. This is actually the smallest size that we sell. This is a large. We sell extra large and jumbo as well. But these are a hybrid tomato. They're an indeterminate variety, which means they pretty much never stop growing in the greenhouse. And you'll see they look very different than the ones in your garden, but they are perfect for the greenhouse. They give us the best yield. We've done studies on other crops, other tomato crops in the greenhouse, and the flavor and everything is just all wrong. And these taste like outdoor tomatoes, garden tomatoes grown in the greenhouse. They wouldn't if we planted them outside, nor would the garden varieties taste right if they were planted in hydroponics. It all has to do with the fertilizer and things that we've tweaked over the years. The seeds are tiny, and this particular variety is called Trust. And when you see the plants, you'll understand why. Each of these seeds is worth 33 cents. So they're very expensive, but we get about 100% germination, and we get about 21 pounds of fruit on each plant. When we start the seeding, we start in a BM2 growth medium. It's not completely hydroponic at this point in the process. The seeds are about 30-some per row, and they germinate and are ready for transplant within a week, or about a week. At this stage, they then get transplanted into a well plate like this one. We usually use 38. The further apart the spacing, the better the stems are at the base. So this is where you get really thick, stocky plants, and that's what you want whenever you look for plants anywhere. You don't want the tall ones, you want the short, stocky ones for health. After just about a month in here, they're ready to go completely hydroponics, and that means completely soil-free. And at this stage, they're transplanted in the production houses, and we currently use perlite. And this is an example of perlite in the dry form. And when it's wet, it's just pretty much wet. It doesn't expand or anything, and it doesn't really absorb any of the fertilizers and things that we put in, which is really great. It does mean that we have to fertigate constantly. We're actually watering every 45 minutes right now. When the plants are here, there's really no structure to hold the plant upright. These plants outside, the roots hold them up in the soil, but this in hydroponics is not the case. We have to use the actual greenhouse frame itself to hold the plants up. You can imagine the weight on the greenhouses with 600 plants in each one. Once they're in the perlite, or whatever non-soil medium, you're going to have to hang the plants from the ceiling. And we use these hooks, and you'll be able to see them in the greenhouse, and just regular baling twine, and we wrap them and hang them, and then we use special clips that have a little hinge on them that grasps the string. Well, I've got some already adhering. And then the rest of it goes around the plant under the leaves and kind of holds it up. Now the fruit on these plants is so heavy as well. You'll also see hooks like these, and they're used to hold the clusters up to the string as well. Otherwise they would just break and we would lose the crop. So we do spacing trials because, you know, you might think more is better, and that's a case for a while, but then you come to a point of diminishing returns, and we had to learn exactly how close these plants could be together, how much we could cram in there. And since they're indeterminate and would grow forever, and then we wouldn't have to reseed and spend all that time waiting for that first cluster to develop, would it be better to just keep one plant going forever and ever? And so we've even done trials where we've had one greenhouse 10 months long crop and another with 2 5-month crops. And we've also done test between biological pesticides and chemical pesticides. And we've learned a lot from that. If you are going to do biologicals, you really need to prepare right away and make sure you always have your predators ready and something for them to eat and somewhere for them to live in the meantime before your pests develop or before they're in enough concentration to keep your predators alive. Bees are, of course, the primary beneficial insect, and we do use bees to pollinate, and you'll see a hive in the back of the greenhouses. And we use these yellow sticky cards. There's some smaller ones in there now. We use those to see whenever we do get a threshold where we might have to spray or we might have to really consider getting a predator beneficial insect. Some beneficial insects come just like this in a time-release sort of sachet that might last a month. Others you have to sprinkle out every week, or you have to plan ahead and plant food for them, and plant a plant that some of, like with aphids, there's a aphids are either monocot or dicot aphids, and that means they might eat grasses or something like tomatoes. And you can plant an oat plant, which is a grass, and inoculate it with aphids that only eat grass, wouldn't hurt your tomatoes. And then you've got food for the aphidious predator to eat, just in case you have ever got aphids in your greenhouse, which is very interesting. Those are called banker plants, if anyone's interested in anything like that. But you can order these in the mail, and they come, you know, just UPS or in a little styrofoam box, just like anything else would. It's pretty neat. And the bees actually come in the mail too. And fertilizer, like I mentioned before, we just check it. With tomatoes, we like the pH to be around 6, maybe a little less, but plus or minus 0.2. And they do really well. We changed the fertility, which is the EC, the electroconductivity, depending on where we're at in the age of the plant. We like to ramp it up and then slowly ramp it back down, especially when the sun gets so hot that they would grow so fast they might split. So we've tweaked the fertilizer quite a lot for flavor and growth. We like the growth habit of the plants to be more vertical and not really bushy. And these were all things that we learned. It's not just the fertilizer, but the timing of the concentration of it. All of our research projects here are quantitated by yield. We do use our observations to tweak things, but for the most part, we define what worked and what didn't by how much product we got, what size it was, and the quality of it. So everything has to be counted, weighed, and graded, and culls are separated and defined by what made them a cull. And they are all weighed separately too. So all the fruit, thousands of pounds possibly, comes in here on twice a week on pick days in the spring and gets loaded onto this grading table. And the holes are graduated so that we've got medium, large, extra large, and jumbo. Anything smaller than a medium, we have to size by hand. Anything larger than an extra large is a jumbo. So a jumbo is anything that's, say, 6/10 or 7/10 of a pound on up to could be 2 pounds. Now we're in the greenhouse, and as you can see, it's pretty large. We can hold, it's almost 1/10 of an acre. It's 7/10 of an acre under plastic, and we don't grow, you know, so much of a floor space fingerprint more than as a vertical fingerprint. So these plants usually we try to keep around 10 feet high, but as I mentioned before, we can go 30 feet or longer if we need to. In this greenhouse, we're doing something different than in the other one. The trial is to test these air tubes. Each one has a separate fan at the very top, and it's pulling warm, moist air and pulling it down and giving it lower to the plant, kind of giving them more aeration and circulation of air, which is to help prevent disease. Another cultural practice you'll see is the cutting up. Tomatoes are fed by the leaves above them. The leaves below get the nutrients sort of pulled out of them, and then they just sort of are there to harbor disease and insects and prevent good light to ripen the fruit and good airflow. So we prune them up as high as we can to allow better air circulation, thereby preventing disease and helping to speed up the crop's process along. And we have an exclusion room in the back behind this, so when those back doors open, insects don't get sucked in here. Because greenhouses are great for keeping insects away from the plants. But if we get something in here that would be outside, it would grow to enormous populations, nothing that you would see in nature. For example, whiteflies. You might see one or two in an orchard. In here, if they get settled in, they're almost impossible to get out, and you will actually be inhaling them. They get that strong of a concentration. So exclusion is really important, and you'll see we had to build a room with a very fine screen to keep them out. Another big problem pest in the greenhouse is thrips, and it is the size and color of like a red-haired eyelash. And so it's very, very tiny, and that's why we had to build a volume of air so that the whole greenhouse wouldn't implode, because the mesh is almost like a solid. It's so fine. It's almost like silk. Please come out and see us. We're here for tours, and we're here especially, for producers. Any questions, we're always available. We have 2 big dates coming up where the public is welcome to just come and enjoy steak and potatoes dinner on our field day, which is August the 7th. And on August 28th, we've got the Fall Festival with our beautiful Discovery Gardens and other farm tours. Thank you.